The theme of this convocation is energy infrastructure development, financing and monetization strategies in Nigeria, reducing the risk of entry. Quite a mouthful, but most participants here, mainly industry stakeholders and experts, understand the memo. So let's help break it down. Chunk of Nigeria's revenue comes from oil receipts, despite all the downturns. But on the flip side, Nigeria is said to be more gas-rich in deposits than oil, accounting for 33% of the entire Africa's reserve. So why is Nigeria so resource-rich and yet energy-poor? That's the crux of this conference.
27 funding did not rely on government. We went to the market, but we were able to go to the market on the back of a very robust balance sheet because we are not your conventional JV. We are an IJV. Now, when you talk about the bigger issues in the industry underpinned by mainly your conventional JVs, we need to start to point within the PIA provision that we should switch to the IJV to the extent that today government is 57% of the JV upstream and is NCNC, no contribution, no chop. You are looking for government for every investment to bring 57% of that funding. And we can tell the last 20 years it's not happening. Perhaps it's also time for government to sell down.
Without exploration, you can't have production. Production in turn will lead to reserves. Your reserve in turn produces cash flows and sales. But all of that is not happening at the desired and required urgency owing to the lack of infrastructure and obsolescence where they exist.
The pipeline above ground, the current pipeline, buttressing what Ade said earlier, already has cash flow. We could ring fence that cash flow to finance the new line that should have been done or should have started looking at the future growth of production around the Western Corridor.
The financing is also not upbeat, but there are solutions.
At the last count, we are done collectively in the industry about $12 billion, and we sit back in our offices expecting repayment. Then, boom, we started having issues. Not that we didn't structure the deals very well, but we started having issues about downtime, and we started asking questions. What do you mean downtime? There are reserves there. What do you mean downtime? They'll tell you infrastructure, evacuation pipelines, terminals, and all of that. So we now started paying attention, and we found out that infrastructure was the key to monetizing the reserves.
Two quick questions. How do we renew our infrastructure baseline, and how fast are we moving in unlocking the enablers that will free up the opportunities to grow our reserves?
We need to work with the regulators to ensure that the PIA's intent of the host community trust fund is actually achieved. Because once the communities are on board, they understand their role in the value chain. They will create stability for operations.
The federal government has preferred gas as Nigeria's transition fuel. Gas can move Nigeria from a resource-rich to a resourceful country, but it has to pay attention to the voice of these practitioners, investors, subject matter experts, and the willing financing community. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.